So there's a significant natural disasters that occur within Australia. And the cost of those is ever increasing, and not just the costs associated with the, I suppose, the economic costs, but there's also a cost in relation to your psychological impacts. What we do, there's a number of, in emergency management arrangements, we look at prevention, preparedness, response, and then going into recovery. As far as what occurs from a communication perspective or an education perspective, community education has moved more into engagement strategies over recent years, which is working with the communities rather than actually looking at telling people what to do.
When we talk about planning, it identifies probably the biggest risks that we may have and some of the ways that we may mitigate those risks.
This was purely a technical decision. We picked Narrabri up and we'd say, right, nobody's going to live in this high hazard area. We're all going to come over here where there's no flood hazard. But the reality is, obviously, the world doesn't work that way.
So 3 key messages I wanted to discuss. Temperatures in Narrabri are projected to increase in the near and far future. The frequency and intensity of floods and storms are likely to be affected by climate change, and climate change is expected to impact bushfires.
We need specific plans for each town. How are we going to handle horses at Wee Waa? What are we going to do with dogs and cats at Pilliga? What are we going to do with livestock at Wobbegar? We need plans for each town. We need better education of animal owners. Every animal owner should have a plan for their animals. It should be part of your bushfire plan, part of your flood plan.
So in April the 21st, 2015, our community was hit by a superstorm. We kind of expected it. Farmers got the cattle off the flat. We did all the usual things that we do. But the rain didn't stop. So we lost 3 beautiful lives. We had suddenly 198 people that had nowhere to go and had lost everything. So our community really just did what communities always do, which is turn to each other. Within 24 hours, we had food banks, clothing pools, volunteer coordination centres. The pubs opened their doors. Anyone that had a spare room opened their door. The way the community pulled together was really, as I said, it was based on those relationships and those connections that we had beforehand. And I had a woman say to me that one of the hardest things for her, having never had to seek assistance before, and after losing everything and her child nearly drowning, and not being able to work for months and months and months. She said, I'm living in someone else's house, wearing someone else's underpants. Nothing is mine, and I can't thank anyone enough. How do I repay this?
When you are under pressure, for any reason at all, you will experience anxiety, and you might experience the fight-flight response. So looking at the other side of things, most people know fight or flight, but they don't necessarily know freeze. When the community comes together, that's one of the biggest protective factors. To sum up everything, what I would say is if you are experiencing symptoms, it is normal for this to happen, and I would advise to get help if you can. I know that it's difficult in rural areas, but where you can, do.
What behavioural scientists have found is that if something is very easily brought to mind, we think of it as more likely, more probable, more of a threat, even if that isn't objectively the case. This helps to explain why people are more likely to prepare for a bushfire than something like a heat wave. But what's great about all these cognitive heuristics and biases that behavioural scientists have been studying for 40 years is that they're very predictable. This is not about forcing behaviour change or removing choices from people. It's about shifting the behaviours of those who are on the fence. Make it easy. The first principle is exactly as it sounds. If you want someone to do something, make it easy for them to do it. If most people are doing the right thing, tell people that most people do the right thing. We prompt people when they're most likely to be receptive to the message.